In 1978, Mike Mentzer didn't just win Mr. Universe, he shattered everyone's expectations with a perfect 300 score. No one had ever done it before, and just a year later, he did it again. This time in the Mr. Olympia heavyweight division. Perfect score, back to back. Those numbers didn't just prove he was great, they proved that his methods actually worked. And here's the thing, Mike didn't train like the rest. While his competition spent hours grinding away in the gym, Mike took a different approach.
In that condition, I trained literally for 30 minutes 4 times a week, 2 hours a week.
Just one set. Pushed to absolute failure, that's it. Sure, genetics and PEDs helped, but these alone didn't explain how he dominated an era obsessed with high volume training. After all, doesn't this go against all of the modern day science of building muscle? Mike's journey began at just 12 years old, with nothing but a cheap weight set and a flimsy instruction booklet. Most kids would likely have just abandoned it after a few weeks, but not Mike. Later, his time in the military added another layer to his development. It wasn't just about physical training, it was about discipline and structure. The rigid environment forced him to think critically about efficiency and focus. Therefore, these experiences laid the foundation for the streamlined, no-nonsense approach he would become famous for. While Mike's time in the military instilled discipline, his education gave him the tools to dive even deeper. As a pre-med student, he studied genetics, physical chemistry, and organic chemistry, gaining a rare understanding of how the human body grows and recovers. This scientific background became a key ingredient in his training philosophy, allowing him to approach bodybuilding with precision most athletes of his time lacked. But the real turning point came when he met Arthur Jones, the revolutionary inventor of Nautilus exercise machines and the godfather of high-intensity training. Jones introduced Mike to the idea of HIIT, which, although simple, seemed radical for most. Fewer sets, maximum effort, and push to absolute failure. Forget hours in the gym, forget volume. For Jones, it was all about quality over quantity. And for Mike, this was a revelation. He didn't just adopt the method, he refined it, experimenting with how far he could push intensity while reducing volume. Combining his own experiences with what he'd learned from Jones, Mike created a system that not only worked for him, but also defied everything the fitness world believed at the time. So what exactly were the principles that Mike followed? And is there any modern day science to back this up? On the surface, it sounds almost too good to be true. Train less, lift fewer sets, and grow more? This 2013 narrative review looks specifically at evidence-based recommendations for hypertrophy. Why is this important? Think of a narrative review like assembling a puzzle. Instead of looking at one piece like a single study, it brings together all of the pieces to show the full picture of what really works. And this is what the authors concluded. Evidence supports that persons should train to the highest intensity of effort, thus recruiting as many motor units and muscle fibers as possible, self-selecting a load and repetition range, and performing single sets for each exercise. In other words, the science shows that reaching momentary muscular failure during a single focused set is enough to stimulate the adaptations required for optimal growth. The review also dismissed many of the unnecessary complexities people get caught up in today, such as specific types of resistance equipment or full versus partial range of motion. It stated clearly that there's no advantage to one over the other when training to absolute muscle failure. So when someone claims they've discovered a magical new way to build muscle, like long length partials, where you only perform reps in the extended part of the movement, it's probably not the method itself driving muscle growth. Instead, it's more likely that this approach is simply helping the individual achieve greater intensity during their workout. So what would a typical one set to failure exercise look like for Mike? Contrary to what some might think, Mike didn't completely skip warm-ups, but he made sure that this was only just enough to get the blood moving. Anything more would be a waste of energy and would hinder your performance on the one working set. Typically, this means performing 1 or 2 light warm-up sets for compound exercises like squats or bench press, or just on the machine that you were about to use. The goal was simple: get the blood flowing and prepare the body for the high intensity work to come. After the warm-up set, it was time for the real work. Mike would perform a single set, all out to absolute muscular failure, the point where you physically couldn't complete another rep with proper form even if your life depended on it. And here's why this is important. Henneman's size principle. This explains how your body uses muscle fibers during exercise. When you first start lifting a weight, your body uses these smaller, weaker muscle fibers to handle the load. These are the muscle fibers used for light, everyday activities like walking or jogging. But as the effort increases and your muscles get more fatigued, your body starts calling in the bigger, stronger muscle fibers to help out. These larger muscle fibers are the ones responsible for building strength and that muscle size, which give you that bulky look. Basically, you need to push your body to the point where your body has no choice but to recruit every last muscle fiber. I also have a free PDF in the description that breaks this down even further. So if this way of training works so well, aligns with scientific principles, and is much more time efficient than the standard approach, why do most people still follow the moderate intensity, high volume way of training? The way of training that makes sure you spend hours in the gym, most days of the week, performing 3 to 4 sets of every exercise. Well, there are two main reasons that I've noticed. Many people follow the standard way of training simply because it's what they've been taught. A lot of the fitness advice is just recycled from one personal trainer to the next, without anyone stopping to question if it's actually the most effective way to train. It's basically just a game of telephone, misinformation that gets passed on, slightly altered each time, but no one bothers to trace it back to its source. And number two, a lot of the science supporting high volume training often comes from studies that don't reflect real-world training conditions. Most of these studies are conducted on untrained people who will grow muscle no matter what they do. Sure, they see results, but that doesn't mean it's the best way to train. Instead of asking, how much can I train and still see results, we should be asking, what is the minimum effective dose, and stop there. Anything else is likely overtraining and counterproductive.
Training is a form of stress, and up to a certain point in time, exposing the body to stress can be beneficial, but beyond a definite period in time, it can actually be detrimental.
In the book Body by Science by Dr. Doug McGuff and John Little, they explain this concept perfectly. He highlights that the body only needs a specific level of stimulus to trigger growth. Anything beyond that is just adding more unnecessary stress and delaying recovery. McGuff refers to this idea of stimulus and adaptation. Basically, you perform your exercise to create the stimulus, which is the point where your muscles are sufficiently challenged, and then you allow your body to recover and adapt. Remember, the actual growth happens when you aren't lifting the weights and are recovering. The actual lifting the weights part is just to start that process of muscle growth and recovery. In his book, McGuff uses a great analogy to explain this. If one pill cures your headache, taking 5 pills doesn't make the headache go away faster, it just gives you side effects. Training works the same way. Once you've pushed your muscles to the point where they're forced to adapt, doing more doesn't actually help, it just makes recovery take longer. So if the minimum effective dose is so much lower than what people thought, why don't more people do it? Well, most people are just misinformed, but the other main reason why is that this way of training is actually a pretty hard thing to do. Many people think they are taking their sets to absolute failure when they really aren't. A lot of this is just the psychological aspect. For most people, when they think they couldn't possibly do any more, they probably have about 1 to 3 more reps in the tank, even when it feels impossible. Why? Because your brain wants to stop you before you truly hit failure. It's a natural defense mechanism to avoid discomfort and inflammation, but it's also the biggest barrier to growth. So training one set to failure is a skill that takes time to develop. Now, there are some things that you can do to make it more likely that you hit absolute muscle failure. Typically, it is best to have a very slow and controlled rep cadence. Take a pressing machine for example. Pick a weight that you think you will reach failure at about 6 to 10 reps. For both the concentric part of the movement, the pressing part, and the eccentric part of the movement, you want to aim for a rep cadence somewhere between 3 to 10 seconds. Once you start to reach muscle failure, your rep cadence will likely start slowing down drastically, not by choice, and might even be around 10 to 15 seconds on the pressing part of the movement. When this happens, you want to keep pressing until you can't possibly move the weight any further. Once this happens, slowly lower the weight. The key to long-term success is safety. Slow, controlled movements ensure you're hitting absolute muscle failure without risking injury. After all, there's no point in training this hard if you're sidelined by an avoidable injury. But the core of Mike Mentzer's principles remain the same. Prioritize intensity over volume, and allow plenty of time for muscles to recover, often leaving 4 to 10 days between workout sessions. Now, there are many nuances to doing high intensity training properly, and if you're new to the gym or even just new to this way of training, it is likely better to plan on taking 2 sets to absolute failure, as it is a skill that needs to be developed, and you likely aren't actually taking your sets to absolute failure.